Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to BarnYard Talk for May 27th, 2026. Um, BarnYard Talk is a monthly webinar series focused on best practices for raising healthy livestock and poultry on a small-scale farm. Pigs, poultry, rabbits, and small ruminants are the animals that we talk about, and farm setup, housing, nutrition, animal health, and food safety are the topics we like to cover. We are the last Wednesday of every month at 2 p.m. And our spring series will run till June. So next month will be the last time we see you until the fall. And the reason why we've put BarnYard Talk together is we want to connect and share information with smallholders. And we also want to hear back from you. So today, the agenda is a smallholder update. Then we have a presentation from Amy Hawkins Green, our poultry specialist, on Biosecurity 101. We have some questions that have been asked to us over the last month that we will share the answers to. And then I have some Manitoba agriculture updates for you, and then you're free to go. So for our upcoming programming, we have a technical bulletin that comes out quarterly. That's January, April, July, and October. Our second issue is up, and it's Insights on Housing. And our issue number 3 will be available in July, where we will be focusing on parasites and pests. Our last webinar for our winter spring session is June 24th, and it will be on Beekeeping 101. And then we are on a hiatus until September 22nd. So Amy, take it away.
Thanks, Robin. Welcome, everybody. And today we're going to spend a few minutes tackling the concept of biosecurity and how you can apply that on your farm. So we're going to talk about what biosecurity is, what it means, how it works, some of the key concepts around biosecurity, and some of the sources of biosecurity breaks that can happen on your farm. We're also going to discuss how we can manage those biosecurity risks for the health and safety of your farm. So biosecurity sounds very technical, but really it can be very simple. It's just the procedures that you put in place to keep your herd and your flock healthy and protect them against disease. So it doesn't have to be expensive. The key is that it is consistent. That means that the processes that you put in place, you maintain those day in and day out. Now, human error can exist. We have a term that we say biosecurity breaks, and biosecurity breaks are often the result of biosecurity fatigue. So where somebody's had a protocol in place and they have not followed it for one reason or the other. It can happen. So it's really important to just maintain your processes each and every time. The premise is that you want to keep whatever's inside your barn in, as far as pathogens are concerned, and whatever is outside your barn out. In the bottom right-hand corner here, I have an example of a biosecurity sign that could be posted on your farm gate or at your barn door, and it just alerts folks to the fact that you have a biosecure area where you're raising livestock and that they need to check in with you before they enter that facility. So I'm going to start with a little bit of an illustration as to why biosecurity is so important. And this is through research that was conducted by Dr. Scott D., who is a swine veterinarian from Minnesota. This particular study was conducted over 25 years ago now. But Dr. D wanted to illustrate how a virus can travel kind of inadvertently from one place to the other. In this particular study, Dr. D injected live PRRS virus, which impacts swine health, into a snowball. He took this snowball and he packed it into the wheel well of his vehicle. And then he proceeded to follow all the same typical procedures that he would follow when he enters a swine farm. So he took his vehicle to the car wash and he washed it. And while he was washing it, some of the snow came out of the wheel well and he stepped on that snow. So in these pictures here, you can see at the top that he's demonstrating that there is some snow that was picked up on the bottom of his boots, and some of that snow was transferred onto the mat on his the floor of his vehicle. Now, when Dr. D got to the farm, he took his boots off and his jacket and kind of his streetwear as he went to change into the barn wear that he would use on that farm. You can see on the bottom photos, there is a section on the floor that is been marked off in blue, and that is an area where the staff would use to place supplies. And in this case, it's a box of semen that is used for a breeding herd. So Dr. D placed his boots down in that location, and then after that, the staff put down a box of semen that they would then take into the farm to use. So Dr. D sampled for virus at the truck wash, the floor of the truck, the floor of the barn, and the bottom of the box. And he detected the virus in 8 out of 10 times that he sampled. So it illustrated that the virus was transmitted from that snowball that was outside the farm and away from the farm onto the farm. Also, he sampled for virus in 8 pigs on the farm, and they were all infected. So this is just a really good illustration of how those pathogens can inadvertently transfer onto a farm. A couple more examples of why biosecurity is so important. The first one is an illustration in swine from the Swine Health Information Center news brief. This was back in 2021 when some of the first herds in Germany were detected with African swine fever. In this particular case, I just wanted to highlight that the first 3 farms that African swine fever was detected were small farms. So the first one had 200 pigs, the second farm only had 2 pigs, and the third farm had 4 pigs. So it just demonstrates that no matter the size of the farm, all these farms were at risk, potentially. The second illustration I have here is based on an avian influenza mitigation discussion where we were looking at the flight pathways of migrating waterfowl. And in this picture, you can see the pathways that exist from north to south in North America. Now, over 75% of Canadian wild bird species spend half the year outside of Canada. So they're traveling south to their breeding, to their overwintering grounds in the southern part of the continent. And you can see that there's a lot of commingling, mixing happening there. And then they have their own pathways that they will fly north. And as they fly, they are also have the ability to transmit any disease that they pick up along the way. Again, once they hit their summer grounds in the north, there is some commingling kind of either on the way or as they get north, and the whole thing starts over again. And so this is just demonstrating what the risk is, in this case with avian influenza and waterfowl, which are a common source of a high path avian influenza virus. So now I just wanted to illustrate some of the concepts around biosecurity and what that might mean for your farm. So as we said, it's a set of measures that are taken on your farm to control, to avoid the introduction, spread, and transport of disease onto your farm, throughout your farm, or off of your farm. So in this particular diagram here, you can see the yellow box, which would represent your farm. Your neighbors are represented in blue and green here. And so external biosecurity means that you're trying to prevent the transmission of pathogens from your neighboring farms onto your property with the red arrows there. Light blue arrow it demonstrates how might want to practice internal biosecurity, and that just means that you want to reduce the risk of transmitting pathogens from one part of your farm to another. Could be that you have, excuse me, a separation of species, so different animals, or you could have a separation of animals that have different ages or have different health status. So, for example, you might keep a compromised animal, a very young animal, away from the rest of your herd. And so you want to practice internal biosecurity measures to prevent that transmission. And then the last concept is called biocontainment, and that's represented by the black arrows. So again, with that, you're wanting to reduce the risk of transmitting disease or pathogens from within your farm to your neighboring farm. So of course, as you can imagine, animals are definitely a factor that could cause a biosecurity break, whether that's live animals moving on and off your farm, bringing supplies such as semen or hatching eggs onto your farm. But there's also a number of activities, other supplies and equipment that might be common to your farm that could increase your risk of pathogen transfer. Excuse me. So again, transporting in those transport vehicles, crates or other things related to transport that could bring pathogens on. Personnel and visitors can transmit pathogens. Pests such as rodents or flies, wild birds, wild animals, and even your pets can transmit disease. Fomites, which are just inanimate objects. Example could be footwear, clothing, or tools. Those could also bring disease onto your farm or transmit throughout. Water, food, and bedding for your animals. Manure, dead stock, and waste can all transmit pathogens. And again, some pathogens can be also aerosolized and can move from one farm to the next or within your farm. So what are some ways that you can reduce your risks by implementing biosecurity practices? Well, one of the first things is to not bring them home. So in order to do that, you want to really focus on sourcing animals from reputable sources. So that means that you're looking to purchase animals that come from a supplier or a farm that practices good disease management. And they may have vaccination programs on farm as well that also complement what you would have on your farm. When you do bring animals home, you don't want to introduce them to your herd or flock immediately. It's really important that you isolate those animals or any animals that have been away for whatever purpose, whether that is a breeding purpose or you've gone to a show. Give them a chance to isolate at home before they mix again. Now, this doesn't mean that they have fence line contact. It means that they have separate contact with separate food and water, and they're treated with it as a separate kind of biosecure zone. I have here specific for avian influenza risk that the Canadian Food Inspection Agency recommends not mixing birds at all during the migration seasons. So by isolating your animals when you bring them home, it protects them as well as your facility from the introduction of new pathogens, but it also allows those new animals to adapt to any pathogens that could exist on your farm. We would also look to minimize mixing ages and species of animals, as we talked about before, and not share tools and equipment with other farms. However, if you do, make sure that they're thoroughly cleaned and sanitized before they return. And again, vaccinate animals on your farm for diseases that are appropriate for your area. And I would recommend talking to your veterinarian to get their recommendation. Now, viruses, bacteria, and parasites can live on organic matter, such as litter and soil. So it's really important that when you're cleaning your facilities or your equipment, that you try and remove that organic matter. It's important to clean coops, pens, and cages regularly. And that might change depending on what you're having to clean. So for example, feeders and waters, you may look at cleaning daily. And you may want to remove any dead stock, garbage, unused eggs, and feed as soon as possible. Dead stock and manure should not be stored near your herd or flock. They should be stored away in order to provide that barrier. And you should make sure that you wash your hands thoroughly before and after handling your animals. And that again is so that you're reducing the risk that you are going to transmit pathogens. We would recommend that you use dedicated footwear and clothing around your herd and flock. Ideally, if you even have a shed or somewhere that you have your, coveralls and your boots that are separate that you use for your farm, that really is ideal. Clean and sanitize tools, of course, before sharing with other farms and other herds. Now, visitors is always tricky. Small farms may have a lot of visitors, or they may have a few that are going to come on site. Just remember that people can spread animal diseases as well. Uh, If you have a larger number of people that are visiting your farm, for example, if you have a public facility, or if you have suppliers and other work that's being done on your farm, it's a good idea to keep a visitor logbook or keep messages from those individuals or delivery slips that have contact information and the name of the individual that's been on your farm. And that's just really important so that if you have any questions later on or you have a challenge, you can reach out to those folks to either let them know or ask more questions. We also recommend that you don't allow people that have their own pigs or poultry near your herd or flock. Now, of course, sometimes that's difficult to practice. We do recommend that you practice at least a downtime. And so that could mean that for 24 or 48 hours, you don't handle your own animals before you attend another farm. And of course, if there is a higher risk for disease such as even influenza in your area, that you really eliminate that. Again, focusing on cleaning your footwear and disinfecting before and after you enter the farm. Try not to use your street shoes and clothes near your animals. Again, having the dedicated, excuse me, footwear is really important, or offering boot covers for those visitors. If you have visitors that have vehicles that have been on another farm that have had other animals, you can disinfect the tires and the wheel wells of those vehicles in order to reduce the transmission of pathogens as well. So this diagram here, we just talk about biosecurity zones and what that means and how you can implement those on your farm. In this particular picture, it demonstrates an extensive livestock where you have livestock that would be out on pasture. There's also a barn and a confinement area as well. On this farm, they have the home and the parking area that is outside your containment zone. These areas have higher people traffic and could have other animals on site. The yellow zone is what we call your controlled access zone. So that's kind of your first barrier of protection for your flock or your herd. You note here that they have a shed that they could be using for tool storage or other items, as well as their manure and dead stock is kept away from the rest of the herd or the flock. In red here, we have the confinement areas where you would keep your animals. So whether they're on pasture or in a barn, those are a restricted access zone. And that is the area where you're really going to want to control who and what has access to that. Now, just talking about some of the risk factors for biosecurity, feed can be a source of infection. We give examples here of PED virus as well as salmonella, which can be in types of diseases that can be transmitted through feed. It's really important that you buy your feed from a trusted retailer, and that is so that they also have a biosecurity practice when they're manufacturing and storing feed for you. It's important here to avoid slopping pigs. So that just means that you're not feeding your pigs table scraps that could be potentially uncooked or have a higher source of bacteria or other pathogen that can make your animals sick. It's also important to keep feed in a secure, clean and dry, pest-free location. I have a couple of pictures here. On the top right corner is an example of a feed bin, which is a very common practice for larger quantities of feed. The issue here is that there's been a feed spill. And so if you have a feed spill, it's important to clean it up as soon as possible so that you reduce your the attraction for rodents and wild birds. And on the bottom right corner here, I have just some garbage cans that are in a nice little container. There's lids on those cans. And if you have a smaller amount of feed, that's a really nice way to help keep it secure and clean and dry. You can also look at, excuse me, rodent activity around your farm. You can keep grass around your coop or your pen mowed, which will discourage rodents from wanting to come close to your animals. And look for signs of rodent droppings or chewed equipment, which could indicate that you have some rodent pressure there on your farm. Again, it's important to use bait stations around your coop or your barn in order to reduce that rodent pressure. And this picture just shows just a handful of the pathogens that rodents can bring onto your farm. There's certainly a lot more out there that they can bring on the farm and they can make your animals on your farm sick, as well as you. So as we mentioned, pathogens thrive in dirty environments. It's really important that you maintain your facilities in a clean manner. And part of that goes to the construction. So think about the materials that you're using and how easy they are to clean. For example, wood itself isn't really that easy to clean. If it is freshly painted, there can be some protection there, but you have to make sure that it's maintained. Things like concrete and vinyl are a little bit easier to clean typically. Organic matter inactivates disinfectants. So that is another consideration that you want to, as we mentioned earlier, try and remove that organic matter before you clean. As well, keep in mind that if you have very young animals, they need a really clean environment in order to protect them so that they aren't at risk for disease. In this slide here, I just give an example of how you could look at cleaning some of your tools. And it's really a three-step process that I want you to keep in mind. So removing that organic matter with either a brush or a sponge, and then using some detergent and clean hot water in order to remove the debris. And then you can give it a scrub and provide some disinfectant. I have an example here of a household bleach solution, which is perfectly acceptable for cleaning tools. Excuse me. There are other commercially available detergents and disinfectants out there that are perfectly acceptable for agricultural use. Just make sure that you're checking the label to make sure that it's appropriate for the species that you have and follow the instructions, mixing instructions and time of use. Once you've disinfected your tools or your facilities, it's really important that you give it a chance to dry thoroughly. And that just really ensures that the disinfectant does its job in order to kill the pathogens. Okay, so manure handling is also an important consideration for reducing your biosecurity risk. Composting manure is an excellent way of returning those nutrients in the manure back to the soil. But it does require the right temperature, the right mixing, and the right length of time in order to break down the nutrients as well as the pathogens within the manure. And as we mentioned, it's important to ensure that manure is cleaned away regularly. So in this case, if we have a larger pen, you could probably get away with once a year of removing it. If you're in a more confined space, you would likely look to remove that manure more frequently than that. Now, just moving to dead stock here, I have a couple of pictures. On the top left-hand corner, I have, now this is probably more at a commercial farm where they have a nice cart on wheels. It's secure, it's covered, and this farm has stored their dead stock and then pulled it out to the end of the drive for the rendering company to pick up. It's not necessary to have such a nice large unit in order to store your dead stock. Even something simple as a covered bin or a garbage can can work if you have a smaller size or amount of dead stock. The key is that it's covered and maintained away from other animals. On the bottom right hand side here, we have a picture of a compost pile, and you can see that there's some carcasses that are visible. It's not uncommon for folks to compost some of their mortalities. The issue here is that those mortalities aren't covered, and so there is an increased chance that that some wild critters are going to come along, or your pets are going to come along and scavenge and remove those carcasses and spread pathogens throughout your farm. Oh, excuse me. So lastly, I just wanted to point out some key relationships that are important for building your biosecurity plan on your farm. And that the first one is your vet. So reach out to your vet. They can provide health information that's specific for your farm and the animals that you have, as well as connect with your suppliers, and that's feed suppliers, equipment. They will have health supplies that can boost the biosecurity of your farm. Reach out to an organization that applies to your farm, such as Manitoba Pork Council, Manitoba Sheep Association, Canadian Food Inspection Agency has lots of information on their website. Animal Health Canada does as well. And they have information about biosecurity as well as any funding opportunities that might be available to boost biosecurity practices on your farm. Of course, reach out to your friendly neighborhood pig, poultry, and sheep specialist. We typically will have a lot of information on funding as well as costs of building some of the structures that you might want to use on farm. We'll have information on feed and housing for your animals, laws and regulations to follow, as well as we deliver in an unbiased opinion. Certainly reach out to your neighbors and work together to ensure that everybody's farms and animals are maintained healthily, and establish a trusted internet source. So a source, we know that there's lots of information out there on the internet. However, there are internet websites that have good information that's vetted and proven with resources. And so know what those sources are so that you can reach out to them at a time when you might not be able to reach out to your vet, such as middle of the night when you have a question. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Robin. Now I see, Robin, that we do have a question here that has popped up. I don't know if you can see that.
I can. So we do have a question, Amy, and the question is, what is composting manure?
Great. So thank you for the question. So composting manure is taking the manure and allowing it to basically cure over a period of time. Typically, the manure is going to have a nitrogen source, and if you have litter in it, you're going to have a carbon source, so that the litter could be made with, with straw or shavings or something similar. Sometimes you have to add that to manure, and it allows the bacteria within that manure to compost properly. So there is a bit of a recipe involved there. It allows it to break down those nutrients in the manure and the litter and basically turn it into a compost. So again, just consider that it is kind of a recipe that is followed and over a length of time and temperature in order to do that decomposition step. So
Excellent.
hopefully I've answered that question.
I think you did. Thank you so much. So we have another question that also came in, but in the effort of maintaining our time, we might keep that till our next presentation. So I just want to share with you that we have some upcoming agriculture production branch information, and that is farm management resources. So if you are starting a farm in Manitoba, if you want to look at samples of land and livestock agreements or ownership structures, or any financial management for the farm, we recommend that you contact our Manitoba Farm Business Group. Their email address is there, and there is a 1844 number as well. And we very much recommend going to them for any of your farm management questions. We also have the department has some upcoming workshops and webinars. So the Manitoba Agriculture Summer Pasture Workshop, Beefing Up the Herd, Health on Pasture, is coming up on June 2nd in Gladstone and June 3rd in Killarney. The topics that are going to be covered are virtual fencing, pasture mineral needs, cattle health on pasture, remote drug delivery, and benefits of implants. And if you are interested, please pre-register by contacting Manitoba Agriculture at our 1844-769-6224 number, or agriculture@government.mb.ca. Crop Talk has already started their weekly webinars where Manitoba Agriculture specialists and invited guests will speak in real time on agronomic topics to assist growers and agronomists with the 2026 cropping season. For more information on how to register for these talks, please contact agriculture@gov.mb.ca. I want to say thank you to everyone, and we'll see you next month.